This is the story about the old Engineer gold mine. It was during the time of the Klondike and Atlin gold rushes that the mine was discovered. The old Engineer mine is located about 25 miles west of the town of Atlin, British Columbia, along the shoreline of the Taku Arm. There are no roads to this mine. You need to either take a float plane or a boat. In July 1899, two Swedish prospectors that were on their way to the Atlin gold rush noticed what looked like yellow metal on the eastern shore of Taku Arm. These two prospectors told a couple of engineers who were at the time working for the White Pass and Yukon Railway, and soon the engineers entered into a deal with the two Swedes. Later that same year, Charles Anderson, one of the engineers, paddled south along the eastern shore of Taku Arm. There, he found visible gold in large quartz veins. Anderson staked the Hope claim on July 8, recorded it in Atlin, then returned with Henry Dyers, the other engineer, and then staked another 12 claims, which became known as the Engineer Group. The two men then started the Engineer Mining Company of Skagway and then started to develop the claims. They started to build a small mill, but never completed it. The two engineers had run out of funds and the claims lapsed in 1906. A local area man by the name of Edwin Brown staked the claims and then resold them to a Captain James Alexander and a syndicate of a few other businessmen. James Alexander started out with prospecting around the area and ended up staking even more ground. After buying out the other investors, Captain Alexander continued more prospecting and development. During this time, he was also trying to sell the mine. Then in 1918, a fellow by the name of Wayne Darlington, who was an engineer from New York, got an option on the mine to purchase it for $1 million. The option was passed to the Mining Corporation of Canada. Two other engineers, George Randolph and Charles Watson, both joined up with Captain Alexander, his wife, and another engineer that was representing Darlington. They all sailed from Vancouver, Canada, to Skagway, Alaska, to take a tour of the mine. The same group was returning to Vancouver on the steamship Princess Sophia, October 26, 1918. During a blinding storm, the steamer ran aground in the Lynn Canal. There were no survivors. For several years after Alexander's death, little work happened at the mine. During legal work on ownership, the courts found out that the woman who was with Alexander was not his wife. The real Mrs. Alexander and daughter were still living in England. Legalities as heirs was countered by many. Then, the mine was bought by a fellow named Andrew Sostad for some New York interests in 1923. Work began in 1924 with about $1 million in backing. The mine built a power plant on the Juan River about 5 miles away and then ran power lines and built the concentrator. During this time, over 140 people were employed at the site and development of the underground tunnels down to the 8th level. The presence of visible gold was the primary method of identifying and following ore chutes in the veins. In 1925, reports from the Engineer gold mine were so favorable that the Engineer gold mine stock rose to $109 per share on the New York Stock Exchange. After 2 months, they had milled 1,700 tons of ore, yielding 1,811 ounces of gold and 843 ounces of silver. During 1926, it is said that 7,757 ounces of gold were produced. Soon, the ore was depleted and the mine was closed again. In 1934, the mine was sold for $25,000. Once again, there were a pile of judgments against the mine. 2 years later, in 1936, a fellow by the name of John Hamill optioned the mine. This option was let go, and in 1944, a fellow from Atlin by the name of Pete Brandis and two others bought the mine for $5,000 and some back taxes. The miners worked the claims throughout the 1940s through to 1952. There has been no production at Engineers since 1952. Many small companies and prospectors have come and gone over the years, hoping to continue on, but this mine is known to not give up its treasure easily. I hope you enjoyed this short story about the old engineer mine. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you more old lost mine stories.